Let's talk about The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino. This book is listed as a fantasy on Storygraph, which is mostly what I use rather than Goodreads. So I don't know if Goodreads has it listed as something else, but Storygraph lists it as a fantasy. However, I definitely think this is a romantasy book, and one that I liked, which is not that common for me. It's kind of rare that I find a fantasy romance or a romantasy. Is that correct? Fantasy, yes, a fantasy romance is a romantasy because it's a romance in a fantasy setting. I guess this one maybe toes the line where it could be a romantic fantasy. However, I don't think we would have the same book if we dropped the romance out of it, which to me makes it a romantasy, which is why you can see the Burning Kingdoms back there, the Jasmine Throne. Technically, I think that is a romantasy because the romance between that's Gideon. Between Priya and Malini definitely helps drive the plot of the story, which technically makes it a romantasy, the same as C.L. Clarke's The Unbroken, which is also up there. Technically, I guess, would be a romantasy because you don't have the same story if you drop the romance out of it. I don't know though, because it is not a romance forward book. Neither of those two really are. But The Second Death of Locke, which is what I'm talking about today, it is very romance forward. We start off right in the emotions of these people, like smack dab in the middle of them. So the briefest overview of the book, not to get into a very long-winded summary of what's happening in this story, but we have our two main characters that we follow, and we are always in the POV of our main character, Gray. Gray is what is called a hand. So she serves a mage in this fantasy military, and her mage is her best friend from childhood, who she happens to have a gigantic crush on that has lasted well into adulthood. I believe these characters are in their late 20s. It's clear that they've been in the military for a very long time, but both of them did fake their ages and join early. So they're in their mid to late 20s at this point in the story, and it's very clear from page 2 that Gray has been very romantically interested in her mage, Kier. I almost forgot his name. I think it's Kiernan, but she calls him Kier the entire time. Her mage is incredibly powerful because they have gone and done this illegal thing and bound themselves to each other. But that is a big secret. Nobody is supposed to know that. So it puts them at jeopardy because this is a treasonous type of bond, because essentially what this bond does is it means that Kier as a mage has to pull power from a well, and Gray as his hand is the well. If Kier were to be injured, someone else needs to be able to pull power from Gray, because the wells are currently limited in this world, and the mages cannot do their magic without a well. But they have bound themselves, which means they can only share power with each other. That's it. No other power. With the power being limited in this world, and wells being a rare resource, this is kind of a dangerous thing they've done. But they've done it in order to protect Gray, because she has this big secret. And that's kind of the whole plot of the book. So here on out, I am going to be discussing spoilers. So if you really don't want to be spoiled about this book, I would recommend clicking away and checking it out. Totally come back after you've read it. But if you don't want to be spoiled, this isn't going to be the review because I need to talk about spoilers in order to discuss the things that I want to discuss about this book. So my biggest thing, are they gone? Okay. My biggest thing is that Gray is Locke. And what that means is very interesting in this world. And this is kind of what's going to keep me coming back, because I found out this is a series. I thought it was a standalone. It's going to be a trilogy. Everything I read this year is a freaking trilogy. So Locke is a place and also a person. So what we find out in this book is this really fascinating little bit of world building that is unique in a way that it feels like it's something I've read, but it's not actually something I've read. So Gray is the last... Okay, apparently if I have my hand on the screen too long, if I go like this, which I apparently tend to, it stops the recording. All right, we're learning things. Okay, so Gray is very important to this world. She is this big well of power because Locke is a place, and that place is where all the magic in this world comes from. So she's connected to this land. And this kind of made it very familiar to me because of like the Isle in the Silver Sea, where people in this world are super connected to the land and are very important for like the life of the place. Hugin wants dinner. He has an hour until his dinner time, but I came home from work, so therefore it's dinner time. Dog logic. He can wait. He will be perfectly fine, but he will be a little annoying, and I apologize if you hear tippy tapping. I gotta cut his nails, or if you hear whining, because he's very vocal about wanting his dinner. So we're gonna try and get through this without too much Hugin interruption. So Locke is a place, and this is a place where all of the magic comes from, and it's secretive. The magic is tied to the like descendants of Locke, and our Gray is the last of her line. And it's kind of theorized by the population of this world that whoever controls Locke controls the magic. So they think they have to find the last heir to Locke in order to make sure that the magic continues in this world, which is dangerous for Gray. So she realizes this as like at a young age and decides she has to like hide herself from the world. And Keir and his brother help her do this by helping her fake a letter claiming that her brother is still alive and that he was the heir, but the heir was always Gray. And so they help her do this, and then they protect her, and then she ends up going into war with them, and she's like a healer for a little while in like the medical tent, and then Keir finds her and requests her as well, and then like basically binds to her throughout. And we get these like in flashbacks, because Gray is convinced that Keir doesn't feel the same way about her that she feels about him. And it's this whole thing where I'm like, these guys have been doing this for their entire lives. They have been feeling this way about each other. So they've been like infatuated with each other their whole lives. And Gray has always thought that Keir didn't have any feelings for her, and this becomes like the drive for the romance novel. And it genuinely got a little bit frustrating near the middle, where like, girl, it is obvious to everyone around you and to you, and you are how old to be like, oh my god, no, he doesn't have those feelings about me. And I was just like getting really tired of it by the middle of the book. Gray is like head over heels for Kiernan. Head over heels for Kiernan. But because the two of them have always like had different, never relationships, but like one night stands or little flings or whatever, she's like, oh, he's not possibly interested in me. He's got his like little flings, his whatever. And both the characters like never really like get jealous of each other for that, which is kind of great. Gray has her moments though where she's like jealous of it, but then she's like, I don't have like, it's not my place to be jealous. And I was like, that's a very adult way to handle that emotion, where you're like, I wish it was me, but I'm not mad that it's not me, because like I've never attempted, I've never like pushed, I've never asked, I've never brought it up in any sense of the way, but there's like those are people, and why not me? And it's like, girl, because you never brought it up, which she does admit, but at the same time, it's so many pages of this, and he is like full on with her, like full on like rubbing her feet, her hands, her back, her legs, every time he gets a chance, like massaging. And he's not like being like sexual about it. He never like pushes past, but she's always like, I wish he would, but like then say something. And it's just this whole thing constantly where she's just like, oh my god, like, no, he's just that way. He's not that way with anyone else around her. He doesn't touch anybody else the way that he touches her, but she's like, oh, he's like that with everyone, but there's never any evidence of that. And it starts to get a little frustrating. Like I can see it being realistic, and I can see it being a thing, but the thing is like we're dropped in with them after they've been partnered up for like years, and I'm like, there's years of this, so this clearly isn't like a new emotion she's having. She's been having this emotion for years, and we're still doing it. And I'm just like, oh my god, I can't with it. With like, it got to the point where I was just like, I need you to say something, because you are stressing me out, and I am bored with you. Like I am like a little stressed by your like constant self-deprecating nature, and then like bored of this like, oh, he couldn't possibly, like, get it together. I'm saying this, but I enjoyed this book, but that was like the one thing for me that kept it from being like a 5 stars, because like as much as I don't really like star ratings that much anymore these days, but that's what kept it from being like a top tier book, a best of the year book, or whatever, however you want to like, one that sticks with me where I was just like, oh my god, I need to reread this right away, is because of those types of like those things where it's just like this one same theme or idea. I guess it's more like a motif just drawn out over and over and over, and we're beaten over the head with it for so much that by the time like they finally admit their feelings to each other, I'm like, thank fucking God, because somebody needed to say something or I was going to. Like, it's too much. It's too much. Then they get like their like, you know, emotional moments, their sweet moments, their like lustful moments. And then we do have actually a third act breakup, which is why I was like, this is a romantasy. There is a third act breakup right here because they get separated from each other against their own will. So like, just as we think everything's going good, they get attacked and kidnapped. And I'm like, I'm bored. I don't know what it is about it, but it made me bored with the story. And I almost DNF'd it at that point simply because I was just like, why? This is weird that I gave it such a high rating when I'm like saying these negative things about it, but it's like it never did something until the very end where I was just like, yes, this book. Like, it had its little moments, but it never was like, oh my gosh, yes, this book. But what made me actually really like the book is at the end when Gray actually accepts her power, accepts her place in the world, and just like fucks shit up. Like, that's when I was like, yes, this book. And her being this like really strong, really powerful Lady Knight, and to have to be like pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to like accept her power, I get it, because she had this like tragic backstory where she had to use her power to kill everyone, including like her family members that were still alive, because they were not going to be. And it was this whole thing about how you can't let the power of Locke come into the hands of other people. And so this was like, she was a bomb. She was a bomb. And I think that's why, like, I've seen some people say that there's like, some people were saying that there was a little bit of Gideon vibes to it. And I guess it's probably the fact that she is a bomb. It's probably literally it, because if you know about Harrow and the war crime, then you know what I'm saying. But that's literally it. Like, she's this very powerful last of her line, and the whole world gets turned upside down because of what she reveals, but she knows all of these things. So it's not like it's a reveal to her, like with Harrow, right? Well, I guess Harrow kind of knows those things, but then Harrow gets everything revealed to her, and I'm going to go off on the Locke tomb for way too long if I start talking about it. I just think it could have done more with the tension in the story if it was going to be this romantasy. And it is. And if it was going to use that, I think it needed to build up on it a little bit more. And one of the things I like about the Jasmine Throne is like Malini and Priya get ripped apart over and over again. But that doesn't stop them from continuing with what they need to do, because their universe, like both of their countries, are like at risk if they don't do it. And Gray is like ready to give up everything for Kier and just let everything go. And that kind of made me not appreciate her as much as I appreciate some of these other strong women in these other like female-led fantasies that have this romance aspect and this whole like do it to save our kingdom story, which is very standard fantasy. We got to save the kingdom. And it could have been a little bit more fleshed out in certain areas. One thing I did appreciate is Gray does get friends. She didn't have friends really. She's like comfortable enough with some of the characters in the beginning when they go out on this quest, but she's like upset that they're treating it like a quest because they get sent out on this mission to retrieve this girl and to bring this girl somewhere. And I don't want to talk about all of that part of it, but she's like all upset that they're like doing this, and she doesn't want to talk to anyone and doesn't want to befriend anyone. And she eventually gives in and does, but I'm just like, I need characters that have friends. And I think that's why if I'm talking about like the realm of the Elderlings, I don't like Fitz as much unless he has like a friend. So like Fitz, when he gets Night Eyes, or when he's with the Fool, or like he needs someone. Like these like lonely characters who don't have anyone, and it's like, it's just I need characters to have an emotional support group. I need characters to have more than just being stuck inside their head and dealing with things. And I think that's what really brought it down for me. The background characters did bring it up for me, but I wanted more of them. They kind of felt in some cases like each of them was just like a cutout of this person. We had like the jokester and the mom of the group, and like they were kind of interchangeable at times, and I would kept every now and then I would forget who's who. Now that I'm farther away from it, I definitely have forgotten most about the background characters. When I first finished it, I was like, oh yes, I like these characters. They're great. I can definitely tell them apart. And now, like, the further I am away from it, the more I'm like, I understand why people were like, I forgot who everyone was. Because I kind of have. Because they were so, like, personality, and that was pretty much it. I've forgotten all their names. I remember bits and pieces. I know that, like, between the other hand and the mage, that there is like maybe potentially like some sort of romantic thing. And one of them was like a confidant / mentor for Gray at some point in the story. But that's the thing. I don't remember which one anymore. And it's only been 2 weeks since I finished this book. Maybe 3. I think I finished it in like the middle end of the month. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. I have such torn feelings on this book at this point. And the longer I'm talking about it, the more I'm realizing that my feelings are very torn, which is part of why I like doing these videos where I just sit here and I sit down and I just talk to you about the book, because I get to know how I feel about it when I do that. And that is better for me because then I can know, is this a series I want to prioritize? Because it is going to be a series. And I have a feeling, given that we have to continue this line in order for the magic in the world to continue, we're going to have like a pregnancy thing and a motherhood thing. And I do think we need more moms in fantasy books. I do think we need more moms. Like, I've got the Bloodsworn Saga right there. Orca, muscle mommy queen. I love her so much. Probably one of the most badass moms in fantasy. And I don't like the word badass, but like, honestly, Orca is amazing. And her drive as a mother in the story really brings it all. Like, it brings her character so much depth. And the Sword of Kaigen, right? Like, the Sword of Kaigen and her being a mom in that. And then you have like Jade City. There's a little bit, as we like advance into the future, we have like some moments of like motherhood and stuff in the Greenbone Saga. But like, I think we need more moms in fantasy. So if we are going to go that route, I would like to see how that goes. But the fact that the idea of it is disconcerting to Gray at the moment, the way that it's been brought up, is I don't know exactly how it's going to go that way, and if she's going to have to do it out of obligation, what that's going to mean for her character. And I don't know how I feel about a story that's going to do it that way, as someone who doesn't want children themselves and has been lucky enough to never have felt an obligation to do that. And I don't know how I'm going to feel if that's the path the story takes, but it could take a very different path, and we might not even have that in the book at all. But I do think, given that we've discussed how it's like a necessity that this line carries on, it would be a disservice to not have a motherhood arc in there for her if it is done the correct way. And that is kind of the thing where I'm like, I don't know where this book could have been a standalone. It didn't need to be a series. So that's kind of where I'm like, we got the island back at the end. We got control of things. We controlled the power. We got the bad guys dealt with. Like, our 2 romantic characters got together, they got married, I think, or they're going to. Like, it's a whole, like, they are together. He's pledged, like, forever to her multiple times because she doesn't believe him every time. As someone who has, like, trauma around people actually caring about them, I do get that. I do get it. But at the same time, I'm like, in a book, do I want that? That's just a me personal thing. I'm not saying everyone else is not going to want it. So I'm very torn about what the series is going to be doing in the future, whether I actually enjoyed it as much as I said I did when I first gave it that review. And I do think, thinking about the future, for me as someone who talks about books online, I'm not a reviewer, but someone who talks about books online, maybe when I do give a review, I need to actually just make a bunch of notes and then come back after a couple of weeks and review the thing after I've sat with it for a minute. And maybe that is something I need to start focusing on next year. I think this book, so far, I would still recommend it. I do stand by still that it is a good book, but is it going to be a good series? And that I don't know. I think it's great as a standalone. I think it's a fine standalone. But I also think it did not need to be as many pages as it was. And I think a lot of those pages were just because it is standard for fantasy to be big, chunky books. And it really could have been around the 360 page mark, because there was a lot of nonsense in there that didn't really need to be in there, that didn't advance the plot. It didn't build out the characters. It was just kind of a scene and a scene and a scene. And it moved us from place to place. But it's like, if I was doing this as a D&D campaign, I would have fast traveled through there. I would have fast traveled because there was nothing that was like necessary. And if we had gotten some character development or some deeper character development in those moments, it maybe would have worked better. This was not a very character-driven story, I think, in the way that I prefer character-driven stories, because I love a low-plot fantasy. Joe Abercrombie's The First Law trilogy, nothing happens in most of the books. And I love them because we get so much character moments and so many things that build the world and build the characters. And this, it didn't have as much oomph as I needed it to have, I think, in some aspects. So take away from that what you will. This kind of turned into more of a rant than a positive review, which is funny because I do actually like this book. Or do I? I don't know. It doesn't sound like I did. So, something to think about. Anyway, that's Vlogmas Day 9. Thanks for sitting with me and having a chat about the Second Death of Locke, which I keep wanting to call something totally different. I don't know what I keep trying to say, but it's not the name of that book. And I will see you tomorrow.